This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you episode 44 of season 4 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper in Ayer a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, November 4th, 1911, and I'll elaborate on what was happening in Westford that week. The week starts with the Westford Center section. The Peterson Concert Company gave a most enjoyable concert in the vestry of the Congregational Church last week, Thursday evening. This company consists of Mr. and Mrs. Peterson and 2 daughters, Miss Elvina and Miss Gladys. They proved themselves versatile entertainers with violin, mandolin, cornet, and piano. Miss Gladys recited several times with much spirit and expression. A supper for the members of the CE, that's Christian Endeavor Society, under the direction of Mrs. Wallace, who was the pastor's wife, was served earlier in the evening, at which the Peterson Concert Company were the special guests. At the concert later, there was a large audience present. This company was the family of the musician Theodore Peterson and his wife Petria, who were both born in Denmark. They came to the U.S. in 1881, and their 2 daughters were born in Connecticut in the 1890s, but by the 1920s, they were in Chicago, Illinois. Miss Evelyn, her given name was actually Evelyn Cortelew. Miss Evelyn Hamlin was at home for the weekend. This is her first visit at home since entering Wellesley College. Miss Hamlin expresses herself as well pleased with college life and its environments. The Henry M. Wrights of Quincy were over Sunday guests at H.L. Wrights. That was Harwood Livingston Wright, whose nickname was Dick, and the 2 Wrights were brothers. Mrs. Charles H. Fletcher entertained as guests in her home last week her cousin, Miss Augusta Layton of Newton, also Mrs. Luke Fletcher of Arlington. Mrs. Edward Fisher, Mrs. W.E. Carver, Mrs. Alfred Hartford, and Mrs. John Feeney were among those present at the, quote, at home, end quote, given to a large number of guests by Mrs. Gertrude Carver Skidmore at her home in the Winter Hill district of Somerville. On the Friday of last week, these ladies report a very enjoyable time. Superintendent of Schools, Frank H. Hill, will be present and give an address at the regular Sunday evening service tomorrow evening at 7:30. Mr. Hill will speak to the young people, and it is hoped a good audience will greet him. The Purdy dwelling house, which Mrs. Tyler of Arlington is having built for her occupancy on a part of the grounds of her nephew, W.J. Merritt, who lived at 62 Main Street, is nearing completion. The carpenters are almost finished, and the painters and paper hangers will soon have the house ready to move into. I think this is the house at 60 Main Street, which the town assessor's list says was built in 1905, which is not 1911, but pretty close. The electric light workmen, who have been so busy for some weeks equipping the town for electric lights, are about through, and the lights are expected to be turned on the last of this week. This is a much appreciated improvement for our town. The annual banquet under the auspices of the Congregational Church Society will take place on Thursday evening of next week. The program committee and the committee for the banquet are planning to make the affair a real success. Dinner will be served at 7 o'clock. Mrs. Luke Fletcher of Arlington has been a recent guest for a week of Mr. and Mrs. George W. Haywood. Mr. and Mrs. Sebastian Watson are making preparations to go south for this winter, going to New Bern, South Carolina. The next paragraph is about a Halloween party. Miss Edith Foster entertained a group of friends at her home on Tuesday evening, at which the genial hospitality of Neshoba Farm, which was located on the Concord Road in Westford, dominated the whole affair. A dinner was served at 6:30, at which the decorations were especially appropriate. The other rooms were also decorated with bats, black cats, etc. All the guests received favors suited to the occasion. The grounds were decorated with jack-o'-lanterns, red fire, etc. All the mystic rites of Halloween were participated in, and it was an evening of thorough enjoyment to all concerned. Guests were present from Dorchester, Beverly, Boston, Littleton, and Westford. Next section is on Field Day. The Boy Scouts, under the direction of Principal Cogshell of the Academy, had a most successful field day at Whitney Park last Saturday afternoon. This event has been postponed from the previous week on account of unfavorable weather. There was a good attendance of interested spectators. Reverend David Wallace acted as referee for the list of sports, which was as follows. Relay race won by Joseph Sullivan, Fred Burnham, Eugene Maloney, and Leon Hildreth. Potato race, Leon Hildreth first, Bertram Sutherland second. Standing broad jump, Leon Hildreth first, Fred Burnham second, Eugene Maloney third. Sack race, Edward Reed, Daniel Maloney first, Fred Burnham, Bertram Sutherland, and Eugene Maloney second. Not sure why there's three people in that race. Hop, step, and jump, Edward Blodgett. Tilting was the next event, and Alfred Sutherland won that. 100-yard dash, Leon Hildreth first, Fred Burnham second, Daniel Maloney third. 100-yard dash for young boys, Eugene Maloney first, Joseph Sullivan second. Third place, a tie between George Sullivan and Clifford Woods. And the running broad jump, Bertram Sutherland first, Joseph Sullivan second. The next section is the About Town section. Blodgett brothers, Fred and Charlie, as they are familiarly called, are doing the reconstruction and enlarging act to their dwelling house, which is situated on Millstone Hill, so near the edge of Westford that, quote, the old oaken bucket, the iron-bound bucket, the moss-covered bucket that hangs on the well, is in the town of Groton. This quote is from the poem The Bucket, or The Old Oaken Bucket, by the minor Knickerbocker poet Samuel Woodworth. The poem was set to music in 1826 by Matt Damon and became a popular song. The house is being raised up and a story added, and a general modern trimming up is making everything sunny and inviting. For young men, they have had a wonderful prosperity and are popular wherever their footsteps leave tracings. Henry Harrington of Graniteville is doctor of the woodwork. He was a local contractor and carpenter. Reverend Weeks of Boston conducted the services at the Unitarian Church on Sunday and preached an eloquent sermon on life more abundant. It is expected that he will occupy the pulpit tomorrow. John Walker of Natick has been visiting the familiar scenes of his youthful days and native town at the old Walker homestead on Main Street. The WCTU, that's the Women's Christian Temperance Union, met with Mrs. Samuel L. Taylor on Wednesday. Mrs. Homer Seavey, as delegate to the state convention at Holyoke, gave a stirring account of the doings of that gathering. To make hospitality full and generous, Miss Elsie Coffin of Berwick, Maine, has been receiving the open hand of welcome of her nephew and niece, Charles E. and Miss Belle Walker. Hugo Page, who has been seriously ill of pneumonia at his home on Depot Road, is now moving away from the danger point. Mrs. Wallace Johnson has been giving evidence of lung trouble. The evidence has been partly subdued by judicious attention. Next section is an obituary. Mrs. Fletcher Pope, who was one of 10 children of Calvin and Nancy Reed Fletcher in the days of Groton Junction, now Ayer, 3 girls and 7 boys. In 1853, she married Fred Pope. For several years, their home was in West Chelmsford when the rush of business was on in fullness under Captain Christopher Roby. They moved to Leominster, where Mr. Pope died several years ago. Mrs. Pope will be remembered by many of the older residents of Westford as assistant teacher in Westford Academy with Luther Shepard as principal. He was principal from 1854 to 57. She leaves one sister, Mrs. Martina Cooper of Shirley, the last one of the family of 10 children. 2 children, Dr. Frank Pope of Ashby and Mrs. Nellie Pope Hamblett of Fitchburg, who will be remembered by Westford people as the widow of Lester A. Hamblett of Brookside. One, William F. Pope, died several years ago. He was a sculptor and was famous as having made the bust of Mrs. Eddy, the famous Christian Scientist. The Pope family were actively social in the community life wherever they resided, and as such, they will be remembered by the village people of West Chelmsford and Westford. Mrs. Pope had reached 82 along the earthly measurements of time. The funeral took place on Friday from the home of her daughter in Fitchburg, and burial was in Shirley. The next section is the Forge Village section. Cameron School was closed on last week Friday owing to the fact that the teachers attended a convention in Boston that day. Mr. and Mrs. John Shackleton intend sailing on Tuesday, November 14th on the SS Franconia for Keighley, England, their home. Mr. and Mrs. Shackleton take with them the well wishes of their many friends. According to Wikipedia, the RMS Franconia was an ocean liner operated by the Cunard Line, an English line. She was launched in July 1910 at Newcastle upon Tyne, England. After several years' service, primarily in the North Atlantic, she was taken into service as a troop transport in early 1915. On October 4th, 1916, she was torpedoed and sunk by a German U-boat. She had no troops on board, but 12 of the 314 crew were lost. Mr. and Mrs. James May have removed to the house recently vacated by Mr. Shackleton. Our little daughter, Emma Gertrude, has arrived at the home of Mr. and Mrs. William Morton of Bridgeport, Connecticut. Mrs. Morton was formerly Miss Mary Murray of this village. Miss Marion Cannell of North Billerica visited at the home of her aunt and uncle, Mr. and Mrs. Miles Collins, Saturday and Sunday. Frederick Davis is confined to his home by illness. Gerald Daly is suffering from a severe illness at the home of his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hugh Daly. Tuesday evening in Abbott Hall, a Republican rally was held at which a large audience was present. Last week, Friday, this village was favored by a short visit from Lieutenant Governor Frothingham while on his automobile tour through the country villages. A crowd of 200 people assembled and greeted him, nearly all factory workers. Lieutenant Governor Lewis Adams Frothingham was a Republican and former Speaker of the Massachusetts House of Representatives. He was seeking his party's nomination for governor, which he received, but he lost the general election to Eugene Foss. He had served as second lieutenant in the U.S. Marine Corps in the Spanish-American War and would serve as a major in the upcoming U.S. Army in the upcoming World War I. He subsequently served as a representative to the U.S. Congress from the 14th Massachusetts District from 1921 to 1928. Halloween was observed in this village this year in many ways, the youngsters with their noise and jack-o'-lanterns and the elders with parties and social events. Speaking of parties and social events, the next section is entitled Supper and Entertainment. The first supper of the winter was held in Recreation Hall by the Ladies' Sewing Circle on Saturday evening and proved to be quite a success. Supper was served from 5:30 to 7:30, after which tables were cleared away and a most enjoyable entertainment was given by the children of the Sunday school. We're talking about the St. Andrew's Mission in Forge Village now. The entertainment was in the form of a sketch entitled A Dream of Mother Goose, and was altogether one of the prettiest affairs ever given by the children. A grand march of all the characters closed the performance. Miss Miriam Blodgett was the accompanist. Following the entertainment, dancing was enjoyed until a late hour to the music of the Precious Orchestra. The committee in charge of the supper were Mrs. R.D. Prescott, Mrs. Hugh Ferguson, Mrs. Bert Coney, Mrs. David Lord, Mrs. William Fernald, Mrs. Nelson Prescott, Miss Marion Lord, and Miss Bertha Collins. Sarah Precious had the children in charge and deserves much credit for their work. The proceeds of the affair will be used for the benefit of St. Andrew's Mission. The next section is the Graniteville section. The funeral of Alfred Eaton, the baby boy of Mr. and Mrs. Charles Eaton, took place from the home of his parents on Broadway on Friday afternoon of last week at 2 o'clock and was well attended. A brief service was given at the house and was conducted by Reverend Louis Havermale, pastor of the Methodist Episcopal Church. Among the floral offerings were noticed many beautiful sprays from the family and numerous friends. Burial was in Fairview Cemetery, Westford. There were no sessions of the schools last week Friday, as the teachers were attending the convention held in Boston on that day. Joseph B. Riney has recently accepted a position with the Gulf Refining Company, located in Lowell, and left here to assume his new duties this last week. Reverend Edmund Schofield, pastor of St. Catherine's Church, celebrated both Masses in church on Sunday morning. The members of the Holy Name Society of St. Catherine's Church held a very interesting meeting in the church on Sunday evening. Reverend Michael Doherty, spiritual director of the society, was present and gave an interesting address on one of the most important questions of the day. 10 new names were added to the roll call, and it is expected that 25 more will be in readiness at the next regular meeting. After the meeting was closed, benediction of the Blessed Sacrament was given. The service is being conducted by Reverend Doherty, assisted by the regular choir. This entire service was arranged especially for the men, and the next one promises to be even more largely attended. The children who will make their first communion will receive in a body at the second Mass in St. Catherine's Church tomorrow, which was a Sunday. The members of St. Catherine's Church Choir have accepted an invitation to participate in a sacred concert to be given in North Chelmsford under the direction of Reverend Michael Doherty in the near future. Several of the boys serenaded Mr. and Mrs. William Ledwith at their home on First Street on Tuesday evening and presented them with a handsome clock. And that's the news in Westford for the week ending November 4th, 1911. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Ryan Cousins of Westford CAT for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions and podcasts from the Wardsman at our website at museum.westford.org or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from days gone by. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.